together. And if you don't mind, could you set us up for this conversation with this concept? How does somebody like yourself begin to help others find the best versions of them? Where do you begin with someone like that? And maybe even, how did you begin to step into this version of you?
Well, I'm glad that you asked, because the first thing that I want to say is that being a mental health advocate, because we should all advocate for mental health, it is a love discipline. You have to love this, because you have to be able to love individuals through their broken places. And so that is a big thing. So how did I get here? Well, a lot of individuals, when you go into a profession, it's because you've experienced something. And so as a child, when I was about 7, I was molested by a friend's stepfather. And so from that particular moment, because it was a moment, at the time I didn't realize it was a moment, but from that moment, it began to transcend who I was, and it was in a negative manner. And so as I was able to navigate through those moments, with even having a son and not knowing how to nurture him, care for him, or even touch him, because I didn't want to, in my mind, I felt, oh God, if I touched on him, maybe I would like it because of what happened to me. So as I was navigating through that journey and trying to find that level of healing, I stumbled across me being able to help other children who had experienced some of those same things, and I was able to recognize because I had been there. So I started this journey from that place, because originally one of my degrees is in political science, and I was going to go to law school. And then I had an opportunity of working with youth when I was in undergrad, and that changed the trajectory of where I was going. And so that's how I actually got to this place of just wanting to specialize in trauma and help individuals to be able to come out of a place of brokenness that entered in their most vulnerable areas of life.
So when you're walking with people, most people have, it seems to me, that most people have an instance in their past that is negatively affecting, or could or has negatively affected at one point in time their present.
Yes.
So how do you said, it was great, you said it was a moment. You chose those words intentionally. I could see it in your eyes.
Yes.
So could you speak to that? Because how do we help those things that are negative in our past be moments that we move on from? Because I feel like that's the thing that you're really wanting to, that you're hitting on intentionally.
Yes, and it is important. So the first thing I want to say before I talk about the moments is that we as humans, we go through a behavioral cycle, right? And so we never always authentically live in the present. We're always in the past. And so our past dictates the future. And so what I tell my clients is, swipe or no swiping. I love that, Dora. You know, I love it. The Lord deals with me in movies and things that I see, right? And so when I say swipe or no swiping, what happens is, because we continue to look behind that things that were in our past, it swipes the future, because I can never live in the present. Every time I handle you, I'm not even dealing with you from the conversation that we're having right now. I'm dealing with you from what happened to me in the past. And so now I'm angry about the past. You just said, no, Heather, we're not doing it that way. And then I say, well, you're rejecting me, and you don't like me, and you are trying to make things hard for me. No, you just said, no, Heather, in this moment, it's a no. But because I am still cognitively wrapped in what happened to me in the past, I can't live now in the present with you. And so that's why I say, and what I teach my clients that I work with, I said we go from seconds to moments, moments to minutes, minutes to hours, hours to days, days to weeks, weeks to months, and months to years. And so what happened to me was a moment. But I took the moment and it went into years because I wasn't able to navigate through the moment. And so a lot of times when things happen to us in childhood, because that's where it starts, I tell people I specialize with working with kids who will be considered sex offenders, right? Adults do not wake up as a sex offender. You were a child first, which means the behaviors that you're exhibiting as an adult, you exhibit them as a child. You just didn't get caught. So when we are thinking about the moments, you are going from a second to a moment to a minute to an hour. And so you have to realize that individuals, when we are dealing with them right now, we're still dealing with that arrested development. We're still dealing with the child behavior. We're still dealing with the things that have happened to them in their past. And now it's reflecting or it's manifesting now in their present.
What happens to somebody who doesn't deal with childhood trauma or a crisis like that?
Well, what can happen is it will definitely augment how their adulthood looks as they matriculate. And I can even use me as an example, right? So I was molested at 7. And so because of that, number one, I thought that I was being punished because technically I was disobedient in the situation. So what happens is sometimes we use things that we really have no control over, but we use it to be a bad situation because my parents had told me, so I'm originally from Gary, Indiana. And so my parents were cautious. I'm not going to say they were strict. They were very cautious. And so I was told not to leave off the porch. And so I was disobedient. I went up the street to my friend's house. And I know I was told not to go into people's houses, but I was disobedient. So in my mind, my consequence of what happened to me is because I was disobedient. Wow. So that was the first thing. So for a lot of my life, I was like, oh my God, if I do something, if I'm disobedient, bad things are going to happen. That is not true. Because things can just happen. But for a long period of time, when things would happen, I would be like, oh my goodness, I was bad. What did I do wrong? Right? So now the first thing that entered into my mind, right? Because when you talk about the mind, it's so amazing. And so we have this region in our mind called the limbic region, right? That is the region that houses our emotions and it houses memory, all of those things. The amygdala, I talk about the amygdala all the time. That is a place of imprinting. What was it, Twilight? They talk about the imprinting, right? Well, the amygdala was designed to imprint. It imprints good, bad, ugly, or indifference. So whatever happens in your life, it is imprinted, right? And so the first imprinting was that happened, but it happened because I was bad.
How do you help somebody begin to take steps where they reconcile or can begin to move on? Because I think there's moments obviously where you need professional help, like yourself. And how does somebody get to a point of like, okay, now I can wrestle with this up until a point.
Yes.
And then I may need some help versus like where does somebody go if they're like, I do have some things I need to work through so that they can begin to be in the moment as best they can?
Yes. So with that, the best way I would say is that you have to have a conversation. Okay. Yeah. Because we're having a conversation. And the conversation is important because at one point I was fearful and shameful to talk about it. And so now that I can talk about it, it begins to bring the healing, and it no longer allows me to be nervous or to think that you, Trevor, would think something bad about me.
Right.
So the first step is that you have to be able to speak it out of your mouth. I had to be able, it took, I think I was 35. I wrote it in my first book. That's when my parents found out. That's when I exposed it at 35. Wow. But I had dealt with all of that silently. I didn't know if I wanted to live. I was a single mother. I didn't even know how to manage, navigate. And so I dealt with all of that in secret. And so when I was able to speak about it, then I was like, oh, people still like me. Like, it's not a bad thing. And others have experienced what I have experienced. I just wasn't the only one. And so when I was able to have a conversation about it, then that is what I would say broke the stronghold, right? Because a stronghold is nothing but your perception. So it was how I thought you would look at me. And so once I was able to say it, and you still loved me, you still was like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry to hear that. I was like, I took a breath. And so that is the first step, that you have to be able to say that it happened and it wasn't my fault.
It sounds like if we bottle it up, it's only a matter of time before it explodes.
Yes.
Because there is a shaking that will happen in our lives.
It is.
Right? You will get shook at one point or another. You can hold it for a long time, right? Around,
yes.
30-ish years, you held it. And it's like, oh my gosh, we are really good as humans at bottling those imprints or emotions. And it's super powerful because we will never forget that bottle. Mm-hmm. We may put it on a shelf. We may try our best to close the door and forget about it, but we know it's there.
Yes.
And so what I'm hearing you say is, if we can have a moment of conversation where we discover what that bottle is full of, in the context of a community that we know cares about us,
yes,
it helps us realize one key thing that I think you said, and it's that I'm not alone.
Yes.
I'm not alone. No one's perfect. I'm not alone. Others have been here before, and we can get through this. And there is, there's light on the other side of this darkness if we'll allow ourselves to walk through that.
Yes.
And I think what I'm realizing, even just what you're saying, if you do not have a community, good luck ever having a conversation.
Yes.
I mean, shoot, right? Like that's one of the most powerful things is, okay, logically, I know you care about me. And it's like, if I know that to be true, then I can muster up the courage to say, I need to talk to you about something.
Yes.
That I'm wrestling with, or that I haven't really talked to anyone about. What would you say to somebody who's never had the conversation? What would you say to them if they're listening to this?
So what I would say is that community is important, and you have to be intentional on a safe space. And what's important about a safe space, I want to be clear about that. A lot of times when we have experienced some type of trauma, it becomes who we are. So I'm attracted to it. And so I tell individuals, and so I'm the consequence queen. I'm like, you smell like it. I said, you attract what you smell like. Wow. So if I'm rejected, I attract rejection, because wholeness and brokenness don't go together. So when you are looking for a safe space, you have to go to a safe space that's whole, because you are familiar with going to something that looks like you. So when I was navigating, everything that I went to looked like me. So they could not really pour into the place of what I needed because it really wasn't a safe space, although it looked like it, because it looked like me. Yeah. And so you have to be intentional of looking for a space when it just doesn't look like you, when it doesn't feel like you, when it really makes you uncomfortable. Because, safe spaces, you're like, oh, my God, it's safe. I feel good. Oh, my God, love it. No, a safe space has a level of you being uncomfortable in the beginning. And so individuals don't realize that.
A safe space is always uncomfortable in the beginning.
In the beginning.
Is it because you have not become the person that you need to be attracting the people that you want to become? Right? Like, what I mean is, I don't know if I said that correctly, but it's, you're looking for a space of people you want to be like. You're not them yet.
I would say yes, but also it is because you don't have to be vulnerable.
Okay.
Because if I come to you and we've already experienced the same thing, it's quiet. I don't even have to talk about it.
Right.
I don't have to be vulnerable with you. But when I'm going into a safe space, I have to challenge what's on the inside of me and become vulnerable.
Okay. How does someone overcome that?
Well, it would happen with relationships.
Okay.
Relationships. And the reason why I say that, and I want to bring just a little bit more clarity because I know people may not understand. We have something called trauma bonds. And so a trauma bond is when you meet individuals because you're the same, but as you are learning or trying to grow or really starting to recognize that, I feel like I'm in the same place. I'm in a cycle. I was here last year. I was really here the year before. I actually was here 3 years ago, and I'm still in the same place. So when you start feeling that and the other person is not growing and you're saying, hey, Trevor, we was doing this last year. And Trevor, you're like, oh, we're fine. It's okay. And so when you are trying to move to another place, you then realize that, oh, my God, I'm connected to me, right? I'm connected to me. So when you start feeling that you're connected to you, that you are looking at you and you're not looking at something that's better, something that's greater. But when I look in the mirror, when I look at you, I mimic me. Then at that moment, you're like, okay. And people experience that. They don't realize they're experiencing it.
One of my favorite quotes is, without vision, the people perish.
Yes.
And so what I hear you saying is, if we stay on the cycle without vision of where we're trying to go, who we're trying to become,
yes, then
that immediately gets us back into a cycle because we don't have something greater to aspire to.
Absolutely.
To pursue. And I think as we try to grow, that's where, all growth is difficult.
It is.
All growth has some type of pressure. All growth is really uncomfortable. All growth is difficult. All of it.
Yes.
And so if you describe, is there a way, and I don't know if this is true, is there a way for you to describe what that cycle looks like for people? Is there a typical cycle, or is it just a cycle and the different points on the cycle are dependent on you? I don't know if it's, yes, obviously every cycle is going to be personal, but are there steps to those cycles?
So we do have the behavioral cycle. Okay. It is a cycle.
Okay.
And so typically we start off happy, right? We're in this happy place. And so then we go from happy to things are not necessarily going good, right? And so we go from things not going good to things going extremely bad. But then they start getting good again. And so then now I'm back happy. And so then it goes again. I'm happy for a moment, right? Because it's a behavioral cycle, which means we have to change behaviors. So it's going good. And so then something happens and it begins to go bad. And then it goes a little worse. But then we talked about that light at the tunnel, then it starts to get good again. Okay, and then all of a sudden it's real good. But then something happens. Because see, that's how life takes us. Then something happens, and so then it's bad again. And then so it's just full circle. It's full circle. But the problem is it's based on a behavior. And so if when we tell people, if I tell my kids, if you tell me you're sorry, that means that you change your behavior and you will not do that again. Because if you're not changing the behavior, then you're going to repeat the cycle. That's why we have those revolving doors. But if there's a break where we can change the behavior, then the behavior cycle changes. And so the behavior cycle can go, things are good. I had a break. Oh my God, something happened. I have to make some changes, and now it's good again. So the behavior cycle changes. And so now how I look at what's happening in my life determines my response. And so I tell people it's a TATER, T-A-T-E-R. The first T is a trigger. So you get triggered. Your automatic thought, that's the A and the T, that's the next one. Your automatic thought is whatever has happened in your life. Whatever has happened, you're going to always have an automatic thought. That is a behavior that is connected to the automatic thought. And then after that, you're going to give me an emotion, right? Yeah. And then we're going to respond. And so I tell people, this is the example I give. My grandmother used to make apple pie. I smell apple pie. I'm triggered. My automatic thought is, my grandmother made apple pie. Oh my God, she's no longer here. The emotion that I give, it can either be sadness, it could be excitement, like, oh my God, I just remember all of the times we had together when I was a little girl. It just depends. That's the emotion. Here comes the response. So I meet Trevor, I run into Trevor. Trevor kind of ran me off the road a little bit. And now because I've already had an automatic thought concerning my grandmother and I'm not in good space, because that was the emotion I got. Now my response to Trevor is, you tried to run me off the road. Are you following me? Yeah. It's a behavioral cycle. Yeah. So we have to be intentional on understanding where we are so that the response is different.
Okay, so how do I know I'm in a bad cycle? Is it because I go negative? Or because we can be negative on, we can be negative, in this moment and positive in that, and we can kind of go back and forth. And growth can still happen if we can get our mind right, I think.
Absolutely.
And overcome those negativities. But there has to be habits of overcoming for us to keep going that direction. So how do I, if you're coaching me and it's like this. I love the child analogy you brought up, because children are really good at saying "I'm sorry" and then doing the same thing. Well, but adults are too. So it's right. So let's take it the children so we don't make ourselves feel bad for a moment. So what makes me have a break? How do I know I'm in a bad cycle? Because this is a habit, because we've been here before, and I don't like who I am in this moment. Like, what would you say is you are in a bad behavioral cycle?
So I'm in a bad behavioral cycle, and that means that something has triggered me. Because in order for me to...
Oh, if you're controlled by it.
Yes.
Okay.
Because it only happens through a trigger.
Okay.
And remember I talked about the amygdala, that whole imprinting? It's a trigger. And so if something triggers me, it's going, and this is what I tell people, Trevor, it's really okay not to be okay. Yeah. But it's not okay to stay not okay.
I absolutely love this. Okay, the other day, I was in a meeting with a bunch of people I'm not normally in a meeting with, and it wasn't like a regular meeting. And I'm sitting there, and I immediately have negative thoughts about the things that are going on, and even the people that I'm listening to. And I've never met these people before. And I begin to pause, and I begin to question where those came from, and why I was triggered to go that direction when these people I don't even know. And I love what you're talking about because I've been trained by people like yourself and others to identify those things that trigger me to go negative and say, hold up, time out. Mm-hmm. And I love that opportunity to say, like, why am I feeling this way? Mm-hmm. Why am I thinking this direction? And let's address it at its root.
Yes.
Because these people have done nothing against me, and they're trying to do amazing things. So where does that come from? Well, it comes from a moment in my past where someone was saying something similar.
Yes, it was a trigger.
Yes, it was a trigger. And they were representing something that I had a negative attachment to in my past. Mm-hmm. Well, in a lot of ways, I need to go address that again because maybe I didn't extend forgiveness. Maybe I didn't extend an opportunity to say, hey, look, I'm not bitter about this anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm going to leave it there. I don't hold them to that anymore. And what's cool about that is those habits actually helped me move forward in a positive light and not necessarily surround myself to go back to those things. What I hear you saying, it's not, if you are triggered, that doesn't mean you're in a bad behavioral cycle.
Absolutely.
That means you have an opportunity to get in one.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I'm just making sure that I'm understanding what you're talking about.
And I love that you said that because you had an opportunity to change because you could have went there with them.
Right.
Because remember I said in the amygdala, it's an imprinting. And I'm going to keep saying that. Things that have happened to you in your past, it imprints, which means that it's a fragment, which is why you can be triggered. Right?
Yes.
And so because it was a trigger and you recognize that, you were like, oh, okay, so I can't take them there because they are not my past. I'm right here in the present, and we're just going to deal with what's in the present, right? And so you were able to, even though you had an emotion,
I did, yeah.
You responded differently. Yeah. Because you could have responded how you typically or what you might have done in the past, but you responded differently.
You know what's unique about that is right after kind of some of those things, I got counseling for a week straight about that thing, and what's cool about that is I was counseled to make sure I went through the counseling.
Yeah.
And so that I could be the healthiest version of myself on the other side of that.
Yes.
So that I could be available to my family and friends and to the communities that I was trying to impact and be a positive influence on. So you're making a ton of sense on how you make a ton of sense to me.
Yes.
And I think it's very, very practical of what you're saying. I want to reiterate one thing for everyone. Mm-hmm. And this is what I've heard you say, and you said it at length, but I think there's an opportunity to be really specific and short. And I want you to check me on this, make sure I'm okay. Like this is right. If it controls you and you don't control it, you may be in a bad behavioral cycle.
Yes, absolutely. Because it's just a behavior.
Yeah.
It's just a moment. But we allow those moments to last for years. And that's what we want individuals to know. Because even if I'm coaching, my question would be, well, how did that work for you, Trevor? Right. Just how did it work for you? Because even had you not been pleasant, you still missed out on showing love, showing who you really are, and then a business meeting. Yeah. So my question would be, so how did that work for you, Trevor? And I do that with either my, because I'm not here to judge, even when I'm doing therapy, when they come, because they have behaviors. We all have behaviors. I had one of my clients, she was dealing with stuff because I deal with grief, working with individual grief. And so she went out and cut herself. And so when we spoke, I just said, she was like, oh, I don't want you to be mad. I said, well, I'm not mad at you. I said, but it's interesting that because of what someone else did, you abuse yourself. And she was quiet because she never thought about it like that. I said, you allowed someone else's behavior to make you abuse yourself. And she was quiet. And she was like, oh. And I said, absolutely. I said, so I want you to think about that. I said, whoever the person was, because life takes us on journeys. But because of what you did to me, Trevor, I can no longer abuse myself. I can no longer beat myself up and punch my own self in the face. Right. I can no longer drag my own self, through the mud or across the street. I can no longer inflict pain on myself because of what you did. And so we don't think about it that way. And so when I said that, she was just like, and I said, but it's okay, it was just a behavior. So we're going to change our behaviors now, right? It's right. Just a behavior. And so we don't get mad because it was just a moment and you didn't think. You know, and I'm not mad. I just want you to understand that you are inflicting pain on yourself because of what someone else did to you.
Why do you talk so plainly?
Because I want to be able to meet the need of the person that I'm working with. And so me using all of my technical terms is not going to benefit them. I need to come to their level. I need you to know that I really do understand and that it is okay. It is 100% okay because we all go through different challenges in life, and I want to help to bring you out of the place that you're in. But I can't do that unless I allow you to get to, and what I tell people is I have to give you language. You cannot take authority, which means you can't face something that you don't understand. And so if I give you language, if I explain it to you, if I say, hey, Trevor, every time you decide to go and hurt yourself, whether it's in alcohol, drugs, whatever, because you've not dealt with whatever, you're hurting yourself. You're hurting your family. You're hurting the community who respects you, who looks up to you. Every time you do that, you hurt yourself, which then hurts other people because of what somebody else did. And they have not missed sleep. They are living their best. Let me say this one more time. I need you guys to understand that they are living their best life. Yeah. They are not even thinking about you. Because when I deal with individuals in their trauma, I ask them a question. I said, so do you know anything about the people that hurt your feelings? And they say, yes. Why? Because they're stalking them. And I said, well, tell me something about them. They tell me that, oh my God, they have a family, they're running businesses, they are doing all of these things. And I said, so what are you doing? I said, they have not changed the behavior. Their life continues to move forward, but you're stagnant. And you want to know what my question is? Trevor, how's that working for you?
I feel like that's on repeat in your doctoral notes.
Absolutely.
When you spend time with
How
somebody.
is that working for you?
Yeah, how's that working for you?
How is that working for you?
Novel question.
Yeah, and you know what I say? Because, listen, I have some, I got a 31-year-old and a 24-year-old. I'm learning the language. I said, I'll wait for it. I'll wait for it, Trevor.
I'll give you some time.
I'll give you some time. Let me know.
Yeah. No. So when you talk that, here's what I've found is people do not communicate that well to each other. Mm-hmm. Meaning it's, you do a great job of beating around the bush. You do a great job of making people guess. No. You're very plain in how you confront, but you're very loving in how you confront. I feel that and I sense that. And at the same time, because your motive is to help somebody understand.
Yes.
I just want you to simply understand. But you're not going to be able to simply understand unless I use simple language, unless I'm pretty direct, and unless I ask the questions that actually address the problem, that hit the pain point. Because if we don't hit the pain point, we may never have the pain and the problem get solved for.
Yes.
And so when you speak plainly, I hear it out of a place of love.
Yes.
And kindness.
Because it is a love discipline. I'm going to say that again. When I train therapists, because I do, they come to my site for internships. It is love. Yeah. And if you do not have love, you cannot master this field. because the people are hurting and broken. And so you have to always give love all the time. And that is what's really, really important because, we draw people through love. That's just how that works. And so when you show them that I love you, but I need you to know, as you stated, this is what I say, I just need you to sit in the emotion. It doesn't feel good, but I need you to sit in it. And so when we sit in it, then we can now deal with it.
Yeah. Is that takes the longest, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Is for someone to sit in it and to self-discover them holding on to and bottling up these negative emotions and the imprint that you talk about. If we don't address it and sit in it and understand it for what it is, then we may never get the courage to move on from.
Yes.
Or have the understanding that we must move on from it.
Yes. Yes.
We must. Or it will be the end of us, is what I like, right? Like,
yes.
If we don't move on from it, then we can only go so far.
Yes. It overtakes us. And I'm real crisis driven. I did my clinicals on Skid Row. Okay. And I worked with UCLA and Pepperdine psychologists. And so the technique that I learned was called short-term dynamic therapy. And so what that does was, because everyone was on Skid Row, they were homeless.
Do you care to explain what Skid Row is and where that is?
Yes.
I know what you're talking about.
Yes, that's in Los Angeles, California. And on Skid Row is where everyone is homeless. And in California, it's unique. They have an ordinance that allows them to be on the streets, to live on the streets. And so I worked on Skid Row. I was in a place called Union Rescue Mission. That was where I was. I lived in a mission for a whole entire year. And I worked with individuals, families that were on the streets. After 5 o'clock, they pulled out tents and they built a house. It was something I had never seen before in my life. And so what was unique about it was I had to stabilize them quickly because I may not ever see them again. So if you came to me, I had to move so quick because I may have only seen you once or twice. So I had to make sure that you were able to function to get to the next day. And so my technique over the years, because I've been doing this for 30 years, so my technique now is that I need to stabilize quickly. Because what if I never meet you again? So I have to ask the important questions. I have to now hit you where it hurts so that you can now divulge all of the information and that I can tell you that even though you're experiencing that, you can make it. And how can we manage and navigate through this? And what needs to be put in place so that you can see that there is still hope, even though you are in a hopeless situation currently, because it's just a moment. Right? Yeah. And so when you deal with individuals from that place, you then can bring resolve quickly, because sometimes we don't have years. I am not one of those therapists that wants to see you for 10 and 15 years. I'm not. I'm that therapist that when you come, I need you to be ready, because we're about to go on a journey, which is why I stabilize in 6 months or less. That's what I'm known for. That's what the state of Indiana calls me for, the hard cases. And so I want you to know that you can really make it. And you don't have to feel as though you want to kill yourself or commit suicide, or that life is just, not working, because it's only not working today. But if you go to sleep and wake up, if we can work through the evening, we endure for the night, but joy comes in the morning. Well, joy comes when the light bulb comes on, really. Yeah. I want to really tell you what that scripture means. Joy means when you actually understand, when light comes in, when you have language to your situation, that's when joy comes. Yeah. And it can come at any time. And so that's what it's important for individuals to know, that I need to help you so the light comes on and you're like, oh, okay, right? And so that's what's important.
Okay, so these people, I love this. Skid Row, I love thank you for spending that year there so that you could get to where you are today. You're working with UCLA and Pepperdine, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's phenomenal because you're working with the best of the best. That's what that means. And at the best of their field, at getting people to move from where they are to where they could be if they are willing to, put in the work. And so you help people stabilize in 6 months.
Yes.
Okay, that's phenomenal because most people I don't want to say most people, many people experience therapy that gets them nowhere.
Yes.
So talk to us about what does it mean to stabilize? What does that mean? Because I'm sure I probably have a definition that may be a little bit different than yours versus somebody else. What does that mean to stabilize someone?
So stabilize means to authentically change your thought process. Okay. Because if you're unstable, that means you're thinking in error. Right? Yeah. And so when I say stabilize in 6 months or less, sometimes people don't have 2 years, 3 years. They just really don't. And I'm hands-on. So, people they're like, my thoughts are not good. They're just not healthy. I don't know if I can make it. And so I'm like, okay, so let's talk about it. I have time, right? Even if that means I need to come and see you, Trevor. Right? If you need to see me face to face and we have a conversation so that we can work through what is happening. Because a lot of times when people are unstable, it's because their thoughts are unstable. It's because I just lost my job. I have a whole entire family. And right in the moment, that's all that you see. I lost my job. I don't think I'm going to be able to find another job. And so what happens is life overtakes you. We have catastrophic thinking. It's what it's called, right? Or evil foreboding. That's what happens. And so because we've seen so many things on TV, so you lose your job. Oh, my God, now I'm going to lose my house. And so then after I lose my house, my wife or my husband's going to leave me. Or I'm not going to be able to provide for the kids. We're not going to have food, right? It's a catastrophic. So you take one moment and you begin to now navigate and paint this huge picture in your mind, and you begin to meditate on it, and it becomes you. And so what happens is, in that moment, you feel hopeless. You be like, I can't do it. I don't have a job. Things are not going to work right. What am I going to do? All of these bad things are happening. I'm not going to be able to find a job. All that stuff happens. And so in that moment, you make a decision. In that moment, you just make a decision. And the decision, you're making a decision when you're not sober. So you are unstable in your thought. And things, they all tie in. So if my thoughts are unstable, now all of this stuff is running on the inside of me. Because your neural pathway is a communicator. It was created to communicate naturally and spiritually. So now what are you communicating to your organs? Because we release, in the endocrine system, that's where our hormones are released. So now you're releasing all of these toxins on the inside of you. And so now the stress begins to overtake you, and it overtakes you, and because all you're doing is ruminating on it. You're just thinking about all day, every day, every day, every day, every day. Oh my God, what is going to happen? So then I didn't have a job today, and then I didn't have a job tomorrow. And then all of a sudden, Trevor, the electric bill is due, right? Even though it's always due at the same time. But when you're in that moment, you're just not thinking healthy. You're not sober. You're not sober. So all of life then begins to hit you in the moment. And so it just begins to just build on top of each other. And so there's no break. And so everything just begins to hit, and that's how it happens. You lose your job, then you're like, oh my God, the light bill is due tomorrow, right? All of a sudden. And then the car note is due tomorrow. And so then after the car note, it's all these things happen, and you don't even think that, okay, even if I don't have money, I could still make a phone call and say, listen, I lost my job. Can you give me a month? You don't even think about the fact that in 1 month, anything can change. In 1 month, because remember, I said we go from seconds to moments to moments to minutes to minutes to hours, but you don't know that in the moment.
Okay. So this is funny. Not in a comical way, but in a really refreshing. I just think this is really refreshing. Okay, there's this TikTok video. Okay. It could be Instagram video, it doesn't matter. There's a social media video. I don't know if it's real, it doesn't matter. The point is, there's this guy who has $10,000 in his hand. And he's interviewing people on the street. That's like his thing. Right? He's interviewing people on the street with mathematical questions, equations. And he said, if you can get the answer to this equation correct, I'll give you $10,000. And he's interviewing this lady. I don't know how I thought of this, or anyways, just go with me for a second. And he says, this times this divided by this plus this times this. What is it? And she takes a second, and then she says, error. And he does it in his calculator, and it says error. And she takes the $10,000 and says, I'm a mathematics professor. And she walks away. Now, it feels fake, right? The point is, if you do not have the equation correct, you may be having an error in your thinking.
Absolutely.
And what I hear you saying that I think we all need to hear is that we may have an error in how we're thinking.
Yes.
And that error will not get us to a stable point of where we can move forward.
Yes.
And that's what I see and hear your skill set and your gifting is that we need somebody to help us get a different perspective, a different point of view.
Yes.
Some help in how we're thinking. And are we using the community that we know cares about us to understand the equations and the things that we are trying to put together? Does all of this add up to this?
Yes.
And if you aren't stable, you cannot move forward. If you're not stable in your thinking. And so I just love how you're coming at people's lives because you're actually trying to be a therapist, a mental health coach, a doctor that speaks into someone's life to practically and actually help them solve the problem. Not to just prolong the issues so that you keep making your monthly statement on them so they keep paying you. No. That's not the point. The point is that they actually get to a point of stability so that they can move forward in life.
Yes.
Because you want people to find hope and freedom.
Yes.
What is the biggest barrier to someone's stability that you have seen?
The biggest barrier is the person that's coaching, teaching, helping, whether they're the psychologist or whatever. That is the biggest one. Because, and you hit it on the nail for me, I don't even want to see you past 6 months because it's too much for me. I am so serious. I tell individuals this. I said, this is going to be the hardest 6 months of your life, but it's going to change your life forever. You never get to go back. You never get to go back. I created the 3 C's, choices, courage, and change. The choice is that you're going to stand here and sit with me. You got to find courage. But it's going to change your life forever. And that is the biggest thing. I don't want your money. I want your freedom. That's what I want. Yeah. There is, of course, with what I do, there's no amount of money that you can give me for what I do. And so I want you to be free, because if your mind is not together, everything connected to you has now been compromised. And that's what I need individuals to know. It compromises everyone. It compromises the community. So even if, sometimes when I go to the restaurants or whatever, if the person is off, because I can see it, I can smell it. This is what I do. I know when it's a bad day. You can't tell me you're not having a bad day. I already know it when when the first word comes out of your mouth. And so I'll say, oh, how you doing today? And so they'll take a moment. I said, no, I really want to know. And so typically they're like, oh my God, I just had a bad day, such and such, or whatever. And so there has been times, Trevor, when I've met people and I will just give them money because you're having a bad day. And so I don't want to just be the person to be like, oh, it's going to work. It's going to work, and I'm going to bless you. Because I need you to know that there are people that really care. So if I ask you how you're doing and you're just not having a good day, and I know you're not having a good day, because if you're not having a good day, what happens if I'm not having a good day, Trevor? What happens if you meet me on a bad day and you're having a bad day? It's just not good. It is just really, are you following me? Yeah. So we have to be sensitive to individuals. We have so many cases, casebook. We have so many things that happen on TV where people weren't having good days, and the community was an effect of not a good day. And now communities are affected because they go back and they kill people. Right? They go back and they kill themselves. And it's just because they weren't having a good day. And I remember early in my career when I was going through training for, suicide ideations and things of that nature. And one of the clinicians, this is what he said, and it stuck with me. He was from San Francisco, and he said he was really having a bad day. He really was. And he said that he went to jump off of the San Francisco Bridge, which he really did. But this is what he said before it happened. He said, if one person just asked me how I'm doing, hey, you having a good day? What's going on? He would not do it. Not one person. And he looked. You can tell when a person is defeated. You can see it. When they're just not having a good day. Not one person said a word to him, and he jumped. And of course, he lived. It broke all his bones and all that. He went through a journey. And so now he helps individuals. He's a therapist. He works with individuals with suicide ideations and all that kind of stuff. But just one person just needed to say, hey, how you doing today? What's going on? But we don't do that. Because we're so consumed by life. And so I just want to be that one person.
That one person for one person. Here's what I heard you say. Wise counsel.
Yes.
Choose your counsel wisely.
Yes.
Who you're listening to, who's pouring into your life, what are you consuming? Because what you listen to, what you see, what you read, those things that that lead to the thoughts and the actions that you actually take.
Yes.
That is your counsel.
That becomes your counsel.
Whether you are actively choosing them with that kind of mindset, or you are just flippantly going through life and allowing just anyone just to be that for you, that's still your wise counsel.
It is.
How would you say to somebody to choose wise counsel?
Well, the first thing I would say is, even if you're in a bad place, Trevor, I want you to change what's around you, and you can do that quickly. Yeah. And this is quickly. I make all my people do this. I said, I need you to find a fight song. Ooh. Yeah, it's a fight song. And so I teach them about fight songs. And so I said, that's a place that you go to when everything is bad. And so what happens is you find music that speaks to you, which means that all the other music you can't listen to. The only thing you can listen to is something that's telling you about hope. That's something that's telling you that you can make it. And so I will create a fight song list for you.
I love that.
It's a fight song, absolutely.
Do you care to give us like a few examples?
I teach this to men in the prison all the time. And so, I love football and fighting, right? My ex-husband, we used to watch these UFC fights and boxing. When they come out, it's a mindset. Right? Yeah. And so they are rocking. They're like, you moving. You like, it's a song that gets you hyped, right? Yeah. It's that song that be like, oh, I can do this. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying? So I do fight songs. And I tell people, one of my favorite songs that have helped me so many times. I love Eminem. You know, listen, it's all who you like. I be like, listen, he prophetic, y'all. I'm telling y'all, that man is prophetic. So my favorite song is what happens when you have one chance?
Yeah, lose yourself. I think
one opportunity. Yeah, what happens, Trevor? What do you do? Like he says, you go in when your palms are sweaty. You know, when you feel anxious. Like you just go.
I'm waiting for you to give us the bar.
Oh my God! I just be like,
I'm waiting for her to give us the bar.
You understand what I'm saying? You have to be in that place, and so I teach them. You have to have a fight song. So what is that song that you go to when everything fails you, and it begins to speak to you? It begins to speak to what's on the inside of you. And so I have a couple songs. My other one is All I Do Is Win. All I do is win, 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 like no matter what. Like, can you think about that? I don't care what's going on. And then the part that I love, because it's prophetic, he says, my hands go up and they stay there. That is a place of vulnerability. That is a place of worship for me. That is a place where when nothing else, when I'm drowning, if I just put my hands up, somebody is going to pull me out the grave.
It's very childlike and it's very surrendered.
Absolutely.
And I need help, but here's where I am. This is just me.
That's me. I just want you to pull me out the grave. I just want you to reach down and grab my hand. That's why he said, and they stay there. Right? And so when you find a song that begins to speak to your inner man, that's the things that are going on with you, then it brings hope. So what I tell my clients, the first thing, I be like, I'm finna switch up your playlist. And I switch it up completely. And every morning when they get up, they have to listen to the playlist. And what it does is it energizes them. It changes the perspective. Why? Because if I'm negative, and I call you and be like, oh my God, Trevor, I lost my job, and you not there, you be like, oh girl, I don't even know what to tell you. You lost your job. Well, right, you're negative too. You can't even find hope with me. So before I even call you, I have to already be in a mind frame that I'm gonna win. I don't care if everything fails me. I am going to win, and I'm gonna lose myself in the middle of it because I'm not going down without a fight. You're gonna have to kill me. Right? So I have to teach you a fight song. So when you are in a bad place, I need you to change up the playlist. You can't listen to everything. Everything can't come into your ear gates. Just like you were saying, you have to change up some things now quickly. So now I need you to listen to something different. And you don't get to call your friends.
Is it because of its energy changing and its emotion changing?
Absolutely.
Is that what you're trying to?
Absolutely. Okay. I have to change that first because right now, the only thing that you are seeing is everything negative around you. And if everything is negative, and then remember, I already don't have the best friends already because I've not chosen the right group because I'm already broken. So everybody around me probably is broken, right? So if I call you, you're going to now pour into my place that I'm in. You're not going to say, okay, I'm going to listen. And then after you listen, okay, so what we gonna do? Let's make some choices. You either gonna stay here or do I need to go with you to look for a job? Do you need me to make some phone calls? Right, see the difference? I listened to you vent for 2 hours. Now after I've listened, what we gonna do? Yeah. And not everybody can do that.
So that makes sense because naturally, if it doesn't have energy, guess what it can't do? Grow.
It can't grow.
And so you begin with energy because you're trying to help them flip the script because when they're sad or they're negative, they don't have any energy to move forward or to try to grow or to give any positive effort. And so you hit the energy source and you try to shift the emotion and then you get to a point of self-discovery. Oh, here's where you've been. Here's your cycle, and you learn that. And then and then what I love about you, what you say, and what's different for you is you have an end date. And so because there's an end date, I'm 6 months or less. I'm going to get in it with you. And so you actually get in the fight with them.
Absolutely.
If they're willing to put in the work as well.
Absolutely.
Which is phenomenal. Is that why you are known as the consequence queen?
Yes. Absolutely. And so I always find it to be funny because I be like, I don't know why all my clients love me. Because they be like, oh my God, we love Dr. Heather. I be like, why? Because I challenge you every time. And there's a consequence to every action, whether it's good or bad. And so they recognize that. And so I just be like, I don't know why y'all love me so much, because I challenge you. And sometimes you have to sit and cry. And so it is okay. And I let them know that no matter what, I'm still here. And you know, with the clients that I've worked with, they were extreme psychiatric. I've had clients try to kill me. You know, they spit, they do all kinds of things. And I say, I'm coming back. I ain't going nowhere. I'm still here. I'm still here. Right. And I asked that, so how's that working for you? So you did all that. Did it change? I said, so now what are we going to do to change it? And so not everyone wants to do that. But when you are really looking for freedom for the individuals that you're working with, you have to be able to go that deep. And the reality is that when you are in this profession, you actually step into the place that they're in. You cannot do this without coming outside of yourself and stepping in. It just doesn't work. Or you can't bring freedom. So I have to actually step into where you are. And I have to meet you face to face to let you know that we are about to challenge everything that causes you to have fear, but we're going to do it together. You are not by yourself. So I say, okay, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to drop you, because I know you've been dropped before. So I just be like, I'm right here. I'm right here. So if you're crying, I'm going to sit right here with you. Like, and I tell I'm telling you, I tell them, if you go to jail because you decided to make a different choice, I'm still going to be right here. Right? Yeah. Because we can still manage this together. And once you get to this place where you know that you really can fight, it doesn't feel good, but you can fight, then you're like, oh my God, I can do this. And so now you find safe community, because you're like, oh my God, there are safe people there, and they are not trying to re-victimize me. Because sometimes as clinicians, because we really don't get it, and we do, use casebook, and sometimes I use 5, 6, 7 different frameworks to create just for you. I got to use everything that I've learned. And I have to use, for me, the Holy Spirit. And so I frame it and say, this is what we're doing for you, because this is going to work for you, but it will not work for Aaron. But it's going to work for Trevor. And so when we don't do that, it makes it hard. And so that's why I say that you are only as good as the person that is training you. So if you are not good, it is my fault. And that's how I look at it.
I love that, because I think if we don't understand the consequences, then we're not going to be able to put the equation together correctly, and we'll keep hitting error. What is it that we need to know about consequences? Because most people try to avoid them. Mm-hmm. And we don't want to actually know the consequences of our actions. What does the average person need to understand about consequences?
Consequences allow growth. And people don't believe that. But for everything that I've had to experience, I have learned from that. It became teachable, which made me better. Because it was a consequence to my action. And so because that's what that was, now I just do it differently, because there's really no failure. And so people think of consequences as a failure. There is no failure. You just now do it differently. And so for every consequence that I have experienced in my life, because I am 51, although I don't look past 28.
No, you don't.
I just don't look past 28.
Fooled me.
I'm 51.
Fooled me.
I'm 50, but for everything that I've experienced, I have a positive for it. Right. I can take a positive out of any negative situation, because there's really no failure. It's only growth. And so when we understand that the things that we experience push us to who we are supposed to become, then we'll continue to be handling that same behavior. And that's the biggest thing.
Okay, so you you reframe failure for learning.
Yes.
Is what I hear you say. I love that.
Because there's no failure.
Because there's no failure. Because it's probably only a failure if you don't learn from it and you keep making the same mistake over and over again.
Yes.
Which is really not a failure at the end of the day. It's just insanity.
It's your behavior.
It's your behavior.
And it becomes a choice.
Yeah, well, like the working definition of insanity that people use is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Like, that's a fun thing. So it's like, let's just not do the same thing over and over again and not learn from it.
Yes.
Especially if it's negative.
Yes.
And so when it comes to consequences, what I also see you picking up for us to understand is consequences are not innately negative. Consequences are just the thing that come because of a specific action.
Absolutely.
And so you can have consequences that are positive.
Yes, because we have positive and negative consequences.
And so how do I pursue stringing together more positive consequences? So
the first thing would be, and I say this all the time, if everything around you, if you just do, I said, just humor me. So for one day, call people. And if everything that they say is negative, the friendship is over. But are you willing to step out by yourself, right? Because I need positive things around me. And we have to be able to find out what is it that I need. And we don't really look at that. I'm always looking at what is it that I need emotionally, mentally, financially, spiritually, sacrificially, and physically. And so for me, emotionally is I have to have peace. So Trevor, if I'm in a bad place today, in a moment, and I call you and say, oh my God, Trevor, I'm just not doing well. Like I had a rough time with one of my people today. If I call you and you cannot in a moment just be like, oh, okay, yeah, I understand, Heather. So, it was just a moment. Like, it's good. Everything is going to be. If you can't do that, you're not a good friend for me, right? Because I don't need you to trigger me to bring me down a negative cycle, right? Yeah. I need you to be able to call. If you call me and you saying, oh, my goodness, today, I'm going to listen for a minute. I'm going to be like, okay, so how about we look at this? How about we do this? Or come on, let's think about this. Or what could you have done differently? Because I need to bring you out of that. And so if this is for everyone that is listening, if everyone around you is negative, I want you to consider, is that healthy for you? I just want you to consider it. And then I want you to at least find one person that is just positive, just one. If you can't find that, I want you to consider that maybe everyone around you is not good for you now. That don't mean that they're not good. They're just not good for you now. That's a difference.
I imagine that there's different people that you call that you would consider close friends.
Yes.
And I bet it's because you have different types of friends.
Absolutely.
Not all of them are at the same level or at the same core of the people that are right around you.
Yes.
And so I think that's a really valuable way to think about that is who's right next to you versus who is more of an acquaintance.
Yes.
Or a friend that's casual.
Yes.
What we're not talking about is someone that's casual. We're talking about wise counsel.
Yes.
Who do you call to consult with?
Yes.
And I think I love you helping us think through that, because if we can stack up people that actually have probably more positive consequences in their life as well, then we are more likely to have those as well.
Yes.
Because you become who you surround yourself with.
Absolutely.
And I am a firm believer in exactly what you're talking about.
Yes.
And I love how you communicate, because how you communicate is what your church says is therapy. It is therapeutic.
Yes.
It is refreshing. It is movement. There's so much energy in you. And I love that because you are seeing people's lives change and you are passionate about that thing.
Yes, absolutely. And, I'm glad you said that about the community and friends, because I'm always transparent. And listen, I know you guys are too, because I have those friends now that if I call and say, Johnny did something to me, they are ready to ride out. Right? Yeah. So that's why it's important that you know where you are, because they are like, oh, somebody messing with you, because they know I'm a good person and they know that I love hard and that I'm trying to help. And so if I call and say, oh my God, such and such, and you got to know who to call, because some I can't call because they're coming guns blazing, literally. Yeah. And so you have to understand who to call when. So remember I said, everybody has good. Yeah. You're just not good for me right now. Yeah. So I have to make sure that I call who I need to help me. Because if I call the wrong ones, you about to trigger me and we about to all ride out. Right? Let's be honest. We're about to all ride out. Yeah. And so you have to be intentional. And so when you are interacting with people, you have to meet them because they're human. And so I have to meet you where you are. Listen, I don't want you to ride out because that was messed up. But I want you to look at it just a little bit differently, right? Because if you ride out, what consequence are we going to have? Yeah. Will you have to call somebody to go and pick up your children? Are you going to be in jail for some time? Because we do when we're dealing with an emotion and when we're dealing with triggers and things that have happened, some of us deal with anger and we've not managed it. We haven't dealt with it. So you have to be intentional on who you are getting your counsel from. Because sometimes you just be like, I'm tired today, and I have time, right? Yeah. You said I have time. No. So I love that you said that.
You're exactly right, and thank you so much. This is such a good conversation, mm-hmm. and I think it's very inspiring, no matter where somebody is.
Yes.
In their life, in their walk, in their community. This is beyond age, because we got to constantly be thinking about where we are in our life, because we're not finished yet. It doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, whether you're just getting started or you're older and you're just getting started. It's in light of, life. There's still more for us.
Yes.
No matter where we've been, no matter what we've been through. And before we close, I'm excited about this closing. I have a fun question, a fun way for us to end. Okay. I do want to talk about these 4 books or these 4 things that people can connect with. Yes. I just want to talk about this because if they're interested in any of these topics, it's we have the Me Movement Journal, transforming lives through encouragement, language, and movement to produce an authentic you. If somebody wants this, the Me Movement Journal, mm-hmm. What's the one thing that if someone is in the middle of, they would need to pick this one up? I'm just going to do this for all of them, if that's okay.
It will be good for in any stage, okay, because it helps you to understand that when you are trying to navigate, and this is what I tell people, mm-hmm. That you don't sit in it, because we grieve and everything is about a loss. And that's what people don't understand. You just lose things. And so we don't sit in it, we navigate through it. And so no matter where you are, you have to have tools to help you to navigate, to move through the place that you're in. Even if you lose money, because I've lost some money, Trevor, thousands of dollars, and it does not feel good. And so I always need something to help me to navigate through the losses that I experience. And so sometimes I have to kind of journal, I have to write down, I have to be intentional on things that are happening around me. So I write them down. Sometimes I need something to trigger, right, to spark me to say, oh, my God, I didn't think about it that way. And so in the Me Movement Journal, it just gives you weekly assignments. I just want you to think about it. Have you ever considered?
Ooh, I love
and
that.
so it allows you to kind of process and walk through whatever stage you're in so that you can now start trying to just deal with some of those things. And then you recognize, you know what, maybe I'm not in the safest place that I thought I was in. And so maybe I need to go to community or find someone that can help me, or support groups, because it just depends on where you are that will determine where you're going in that moment.
I love journals in general, because when we write down the things that we're thinking, it helps us think better.
Yes.
It helps us think clear. And when you say loss, or everything has a loss attached to it, what's cool about that is when you think about nature and the natural, something must die for something else to be born again.
Yes.
For something else to grow. And I think movement is a huge piece of all life. And the second one is influence the mindset, 7 ways to change your mindset in 7 days.
Yes.
If I am needing to change my mindset in 7 days, who am I? Who is this really good for?
This is good for someone who is really willing to do, because I'm crisis driven, which means that you're going to have to deal with some things, and you're going to have to put some things in perspective. So this is almost like a coaching tool. So anyone that is at that point where they can be coached, which you understand that you have some deficits, some weaknesses, and so that our weaknesses become our strengths. Yeah. And so when you're in that place, this will be good, because I have you to journal, I have you to do vision boards, and the vision boards are specific. Because, if people have vision board parties, well, this type of vision board actually brings your thoughts to vision. Yeah. And so, because the thing about it is, you become what you believe. And so if your perception of you is always negative, it's not good, you actually become that. Yeah. Your life. And people don't believe, I'm like, your life is what you're thinking all day, every day. And so if I can cognitively change your thinking era, your thought process, your distorted thinking of yourself, then in 7 days you can change.
I love the idea of coaching, because something that I've learned about coaching, if someone really wants to adjust, is coaching is, in the middle of coaching, there doesn't need to be much conversation. You just need to do what the coach is telling you to do for you to get the positive consequences that you're after.
Yes.
It's maybe time for you to be a little quieter and for you to listen a little bit more and to put action behind the coach's words. Because if you don't consider what they're saying, then you may never get to where you really want to go.
Yes.
I think coaching is vital. I'm an orange. Uncompromisingly.
Yes. So
tell me about this one.
So this was my first book. I love it. And so this book was about choices, because I talk about the 3 C's: choices, courage, and change. So we have so many choices in life, but the hardest part is the courage. Right?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, Trevor, I want to lose weight. Trevor, I need to lose weight.
Yeah.
I say that all day, every day, right? But the hard part is the courage, right? Because in order for me to do that, I have to now stop and give up things that feels good. But if I really find the courage, it's going to change my life forever. And so in this book, I used the analogy of an orange. And I don't know if people really understand an orange. And so people think that, because, we go to the grocery store and the oranges are so beautiful, they don't start off that way. Oranges are ugly. They have spots, they have black stuff on them, they're green. They are not an attractive piece of fruit at first. But what makes it attractive is all of the process that it has to go through in order to taste good. Yeah. So what I let individuals know that you really are an orange uncompromisingly. And that even though it looks ugly on the outside, the journey that you go through causes you to now become something that is good. That even though you've been through a hard place, like you can throw the orange on the ground, it can be ugly, but when you peel it, it tastes good. Everything that's underneath the skin has nutrients. And the things that are underneath the skin is what causes the orange to grow and for it to taste the way it tastes. So I let individuals know that it doesn't matter what you've experienced, what you've been through, that you really are an orange. Yeah. Because you are good on the inside and that it tastes good. Yeah. And that everything that you've experienced and that you've went through, it is going to produce something that is good. And so that's what I talk about.
I love that because also when you hit that, what you're really also helping someone through is the adversity.
Yes.
That you're gonna the resistance that you're gonna come up against, and it's not something that we should avoid. We should start expecting it.
Yes.
Especially if we're trying to step into greatness,
yes.
Step into the best versions of ourselves, and I think that's amazing. And then this one is the healing trees.
Yes, I'm about healing. I believe in freedom. And so this was an anthology that I did. And I used people from all over. I had people from Amsterdam, UK, just different places. And as a trauma specialist, because I specialize in trauma, we use something called trauma narratives. And so a trauma narrative is where you take your situation, you can write about it, you can sing, you can paint, you can use any of the creatives, right, to tell your story. And so I had individuals to take a traumatic experience that they had happen in their lives and to tell a story. And so this was a book that just allows, and it became one of the best sellers on Amazon. And so it allowed just regular people to know that you can take your bad situation and turn it into something good. Because some of these people have experienced some different things, but they were able to use that to bring hope to others. And we wrote that during COVID.
Okay, I was about to say, is that a 2020
yes, during COVID, because that isolation was difficult for individuals. And during that time, people really, what I say is all that trauma that was hidden because we're busy. Trevor, we're busy. And when you're so busy, you can't deal with anything because you're always going. But because we were isolated and we had to be in the house, we had to deal with all of that quietness. And people were struggling in the quiet.
And probably because, and I imagine this to be true, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, probably because for the first time they had to be that.
Yes, they had to sit in the emotion.
We had to sit in it, and it's like, oh man, I wasn't ready to contemplate like this, to work through how I'm feeling like this.
And to work through with another person.
Oh gosh, yes. Yes. And not being able to go anywhere.
Yes, which
being
means
in a
that
confined
I
space.
have to deal with mine, you have to deal with yours, or we have to deal with each other's. And that was a really scary place for people.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. So if anyone wants to pick up any of these or connect with you on any of this, where do they find you? How do they do that?
So all of these are on Amazon.
Okay.
And you can also go on my website, and it'll send you to my Spotify link.
Okay.
Because I have some T-shirts and all kinds of other things, Yeah. So I have some great, I'm always thinking about things. I'm like, so one of my things is, it's a question of why. And it's just a why. And so I ask you the question, why? And so people, when they think about that, they be like, why? Because it's just a why. And so my question to you is why? I want to know why. Why do you do the things that you do? Why do you move how you move? And so sometimes they're just like, I guess I never thought about that. And so the question is why? And so, I have some, cute little sayings and things like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Dr. Heather Henley.
Yes.
And is that your website, drheatherhenley.com?
Yes, it is. It is heather-henley.com. And so I am on, that's my website. Awesome. I am on all social media platforms. I do conferences. So I have a conference coming up. It's for women. And so I'm working on one for the men because they all call and was like, what about us? And I said, well, I have to find the right men that I trust to pour because it's an intensive. And so the pour conference that I do in the summer is where I bring women in for 4 days. Wow. And it is an intensive. And we are dealing through childhood trauma. It's just a lot. And so I only take 15 women because I bring about 4 other women in and we just pour in. Wow. And so it is a lot. So I do have that coming up. That's going to be July 16th through the 20th of 2025. And I'm trying to work one for the men because they've been calling. But men are a little different. And so, one of my spiritual advisors, we always talk about PMS for men. And so that men don't think they have PMS, but it's power, money, and sex. And so I have to have the right men that can pour into what is needed for the men to be able to be healed and be able to really deal with those traumas because PMS is connected to it. Power, money, and sex. So I do those conferences in the summer, and so I'm excited about that. That's coming, just to be able to help people find a different level of freedom.
That's awesome. So this is a great conversation. Thank you so much for making time for me and for us today. It's an honor to have you and talk with you. I thank you for your perspective. One of the reasons that we have the full Vantage podcast is to get different vantage points of people that help others with how they're seeing the world. And so I know that's what you do on a professional level. You do it practically and personally for people. So to close us out, would you give us one thing that we could all be learning to close kind of the end of this year? What's one thing that we could be learning about and thinking about?
It's going to be what I always say, is that no matter what is happening, you have to remember that we go from moments to minutes, minutes to hours, hours to days, days to weeks, weeks to months, months to years. And you have to remember that that's how life works, and that whatever is happening, it is only a moment. And because moments goes to minutes, that means that it can change, that it doesn't have to remain in the place that it's in. So if you don't remember anything else about some of the stuff that we talked about, I want you to remember that when you're experiencing things, that it is just a moment.
Thank you for being here, Dr. Henley. Thank you for listening and joining us. If you could do one thing for us, based off this conversation, share it with somebody who needs to be inspired and encouraged with this conversation. Have a great day, and we will see you soon. We'll catch you later.